Welcome back, everybody. Let's just go ahead and give a shout out to Guns and XRP because he gave me the inspiration for today's afternoon video. The fourth industrial revolution. It can't be stopped. Here we come. Roll that beautiful intro. Here we go.
This is Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Subscribe for new content notifications. Now, here's Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. You can follow me on Twitter at BackUpBradleyAbove at the top of the screen. And everything that we're talking about here today, let's go ahead and open it up with this. That's right. The famous investor Paul Tudor Jones, Bitcoin's $500 billion market cap is wrong. In a world where equities have $90 trillion and gold has $7 trillion and God knows how many trillions of fiat currency. Well, what he's getting at there is that there should be a lot more money in Bitcoin. And I think that's where we're at right now. We are at that place where I can't even begin to tell you how many times, and I'm sure you have too, where you just sit and think to yourself, how lucky we are that we're able to be in this space this early. Oh, it's painful because we want it to explode already and already have the money, the trips, the vacation, the 2-week notice on the job or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, if you're not in this space this early, if you're like me, you wouldn't have a chance to win because you wouldn't be able to acquire enough. The entry point very soon, not too long from now, I should say, is going to be so high, I believe, that the point of entry will just be very difficult to see the kind of rewards that we're looking to see. Not financial advice, but my observation and my perspectives on where we are currently right now in this market. Okay, now let's keep this going because we do have some other stuff to look at here today. This is probably quite possibly one of the funniest videos I've seen in a while. This is Raoul Paul, I believe it is. And he's talking with Anthony Pompliano, and Stephen Bull from the Deep, I guess, has done a little magic work to this video, and it's just for fun. And it has them both. It has him talking in a high-pitched voice, but he's talking about Ripple, and he's actually pushing back a bit because we know Anthony Pompliano's not a fan of Ripple, right? But he really deals with that whole maximalist kind of mindset and lays it down for Anthony Pompliano. And you can see by Anthony Pompliano's face, he's taking it well, but he doesn't like hearing it. And I can tell you that. And this is a moment of adulting when it comes to investing, that you lay it down and if somebody doesn't agree with you and you got something to say, you just go on and say it. And that's what Raoul Pal did here. Let's listen.
And if somebody tells me not to look at Ripple, I will go and look at Ripple because you'll not tell me what to do. And I will find out myself what its flaws and what its potential benefits are and assess the probability myself. I may reach exactly the same conclusion as you. I may reach a completely different conclusion. But imagine if I do, and I don't own Ripple. I'm not getting into that fight. But let's assume I think it's got a 10% chance of becoming something much bigger, but the whole market is giving it a 0.5% chance. Well, that misalignment in risk reward is a huge opportunity. That's what we do in financial markets. We have to remain open. You can't trade financial markets and go, well, I'm only going to trade Apple. And every other company's a fraud. They're not as good because their phones aren't as good. I mean, that's ridiculous. What we look for is, okay, where is the secular trend change? What's the best vehicle to express that view in? Can I diversify that view? Can I add juice to that view? Can I create alpha around that view? So that's why
That was enormous what he said right there. What's the secular trend change, right? And how can I best position myself to take advantage of that? What's the best vehicle for me to make a decision to invest in? And broadly speaking, what a really great way to say it there for anybody who's looking to readjust their perspective on how they analyze things they're considering investing in. Let's play the rest of it.
I come at it, and I think all the macro guys, Dan Tapiero, we all come at it exactly the same way. Dan Moorhead, we just come at it differently. And I understand that some of the crypto community doesn't like that because it feels like we're kind of abusive of the space. But much like I talked about with regulation, I get people upset when I say regulation's a good thing. Well, if you want to get rich, people are going to have to come into the space. And talking, and I joke about this, talking about cyber hornets, I'm sorry, it's not going to bring a single corporate treasurer or a single institutional asset allocator into this game. And if you want to get rich, you need those guys to come into the game. It's a really different.
That's it right there. If you want to get rich and you want to get in this game and you want to make some money, and by the way, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're in this space, that's exactly why you're here, isn't it? Let's just be honest. It's not a crime to want to be rich. It's not a crime to want to be successful. And anybody who thinks it is got some problems upstairs. So the reality here is exactly the way he lays it down. And if you want to get rich in this space, you better want regulation. You better want legislation, because ultimately the big money that's going to make you rich because you are an early investor in this space isn't coming into this space until they have that kind of clarity that they need. So he's really laying it down here, and I think he's putting a shot across Pompliano's bow that you're not going to sit here and just black tongue Ripple or another asset here just to think that you and I are going to be Bitcoin buds. I'm an investor, and I'm here to make money, and I'm here to get rich. And by the way, so am I. And let's go on with the next thing, because the truth is that David Schwartz himself has said that quantum computing wouldn't be here for another maybe 8 to 10 years. And if it is, they would make an adjustment to the ledger with whatever adjustments or additional algorithm code they would need to add in to address whatever that issue will be when it arises. Well, they might want to get a little closer to doing that now, because quantum computing breakthrough, new device is 100 trillion times, let's say 100,000 million billion trillion, 100 trillion times faster than the leading supercomputer, researcher says. Well, let me tell you, I'm going to drop this on you for a little something to think about here. And think about the idea that if this computer, in fact, is true and it's out of China, wherever it's from, because the Chinese research team is claiming this, if they have achieved this 100 trillion times faster, couldn't you then, and I said this about a supercomputer that was made with the government here in the States has claimed quantum computing as well some time ago. And I asked this question, I ask it again. When quantum computing reaches that place of really being able to put it to work in practical application, couldn't we then see someone simply set out to mine the rest of the Bitcoin, let's say in about a week or two? Because it can do it 100 trillion times faster. So it's not going to take years and decades to mine the rest of the Bitcoin. We could put that task at hand and have it mine the rest of the Bitcoin in, let's say, a week or two. And then we could take all that pre-mined Bitcoin and put it on the ledger. And then we don't have to worry about any kind of 51% control and all of this stuff coming out of China and this, that, and the other. That's just food for thought on where we're going here, because quantum computing is not going away. It is going to get bigger, and pretty soon it won't be just the US and China that have quantum computers or what have you. It's going to be the world, and it's going to end up being the regular form of technology at some point as well, right? So all of this is something to really take a look at. And I don't know about you, but from an investment standpoint, I'm kind of paying attention to this market too, to see where all of this goes. There may be some companies that come out here and prove to be a leader in that tech. All right. Now, I played this the other day. This is the clip from Brian Brooks here, and he's basically talking, on CNBC yesterday morning about the clarity in 6 to 8 weeks. Now, I'm not going to run this back down and play this for you again, because I don't think we need to. But I'm just showing this here because in this clip, what he said was in 6 to 8 weeks, we're going to get the regulatory clarity. And then he said, are the blockchain and the distributed ledger technologies okay for banks to use? I'm paraphrasing here. And the answer was yes. And he gave the answer. He asked the question and then gave the answer. Yes. And why? Because he understands what blockchain and distributed ledger technologies are. They're payment networks. They're new payment networks. Now, we also know that, Brad Garlinghouse has said himself a couple weeks ago that central banks are looking at issuing stablecoins off of the XRP Ledger open source technology. This would be massive what it could do to launch stablecoins that are fiat backed off of the XRP Ledger, driving that level of utility and value onto the network for the first time in the history of the ledger and the digital asset space, creating massive amounts amounts of volume and price movement for the asset XRP to be able to handle that level of utility that would be going around. And that may exist in its in its first format in a wholesale banking inter and intra-bank settlement, and then it may spread out to a retail, or we may see certain governments release a CBDC that's wholesale and retail and allows consumers to use it. It may vary depending on the region or country that you're in. We're going to keep an eye on that. But the reason I'm really showing this is because of the positive motion that has been happening on the last several months from the OCC and specifically Brian Brooks, and the issuance in banks, being federally chartered banks, being able to custody digital assets, and the issuance of them also federally chartered banks being able to custody the reserves for privately issued stable coins. I think these were key things to happen. I think it's key things specifically about the reserves of stable coins, because Brian Brooks has also pointed to the public-private relationship, which now the Federal Reserve acknowledges needs to happen in order to leapfrog to the front of the fourth industrial revolution. Keeping going here, we know the U.S. moves to cast a wider net for money launderers and crypto and otherwise. This was more than a month ago now when the Federal Reserve and FinCEN looked to lower the threshold on the travel rule and the transfers across borders from $3,000 to $250. And this gives them more transparency of seeing what the payments are, who's receiving, who's sending, what are they for, right? And then looking here inside of that same proposal, knowing that they have proposed to expand and widen the definition of money to explicitly include cryptocurrencies, as we covered here. But think about the motion now, the OCC doing what it's done with digital assets and the reserves for stable coins. Now look at the definition of money changing in FinCEN and Federal Reserve. And then we're also going to see that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that made the rule effective this summer, that made it okay for banks and credit unions to use Swift GPI or Ripple and XRP for transparency and settlement between cross-border payments between banks and credit unions. You know, looking at these things, and then now we have a recent National Defense Authorization Act that includes new language that broadens the definition of currency within that bill to include digital currency. So this kind of motion that we're seeing here really doesn't line up when we hear Brad Garlinghouse say that, you know, they were thinking about moving and there's not enough clarity. It's like, well, things have been moving very quickly for the last 4 months here. And now we hear Brad Garlinghouse say he's waiting to see what dynamics change associated with a Biden administration. Says Garlinghouse, I am optimistic that will actually improve where things sit for the XRP community broadly. Well, I can tell you, Brad, you may want to start talking to the people on that side of the fence, because Maxine Waters looking to rescind everything that Brian Brooks has done so far. That narrative doesn't line up. Now, I think no matter who's in office or who the administration is, crypto wins. And that's kind of my point here, is that what I see out of Maxine Waters, and I said as much so in my morning video, but I want to really drive this home because I think it's real food for thought here. This is political posturing, just like that Stable Act that was put forth by Representative Lynch and a couple others, which is absolutely a mess. But then again, you know, months ago, huge advocate for crypto. They can't say enough about it. They want to see it done right away until we get to a place where, you know, we're looking at a power change in DC, right? And then everybody wants to be able to carry the trophy and say, look what we did, right? Instead of just simply saying from a human standpoint, you know, what's best for people? What's best for the world right now? And it's not a power grab. It's what the world needs. That's the kind of scum we're dealing with. So when we move forward here and then we look at the current price of where we are, we're in that payment channel. We're at 58 cents here. A lot of calls coming up here. We look here, Crypto Bull says earlier this morning, we could consolidate for a few days here in the 54, 58 cent range and then push for that dollar or dollar break above. And that would be amazing because I'm telling you, and I said it this morning, if you think you've seen FOMO, you ain't seen nothing till we crack a dollar. We crack a dollar, you're going to see FOMO like you've never seen. Here he reminds us that the Spark token distribution will have no impact on the XRP price long term. The charts show XRP going above $10 within the next few months, and that will happen regardless of the airdrop. I'm inclined to agree with him. I feel like we got nothing but the wins in our sales, in the XRP sales, and the more regulatory clarity, quote unquote, you can't see I'm making quote fingers, which I don't like, but the more clarity we get, the better off it's going to be because we are already compliant. And we know it, and they've been selling it that way from day one. And at the end of the day, it comes down to what Guns and XRP laid down. Fourth Industrial Revolution. Here we come. You can't stop it. Won't stop it. Not gonna stop. This is where we're going. And the world isn't waiting. China's not waiting. No one's waiting. No one's going to wait for OCC's actions to be rescinded, right? Because they need it more than we want it. That's the truth. And they're going to get it. It doesn't matter who sits in the biggest seat in DC. That's going to do it for me. Hit the like and subscribe. Leave a comment below. Share with somebody you know. Make sure you hit the notification bell as well. Check the links in the description box and the comment section for anything that you may want or need. They are trusted, vetted links, and they are products and services that I use, so I can certainly vouch for them. They're great products and companies. I will catch all of you on the next one.